he just went low. He's in his hand. He's in his hand. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's my man, 100 back again, another episode of How's My Team. We've got a bit to talk about, obviously, this week. We've got the Giants going home after that shock loss to the Saints, playing against the Carlton Blues. We've obviously got the Titans going back home as well after that shocker last week. They play the Panthers in retro round after a revenge game, obviously, from last season, the very contentious one that we talked about last year. Even around towards the end of the season last year. We're also going to talk about obviously Australia in the World Cup against the United States. We're going to talk about Origin Game 2 and the result of that. And we've also got plenty to talk about obviously in terms of the Cubs and other series as well. But yeah, let's get started with the episode. So first things first, got to put the cap on. Obviously, State of Origin Game 2 was last night. Obviously, I'm recording this Thursday morning after the game. Obviously, first game, very lucky to win it. Obviously, as I said a few weeks ago, and obviously Game 2 down in Melbourne, with obviously a lot of momentum going into the game for the Blues. And yeah, the Blues kind of shit the bed again. 44-24 was the Maroons over the Blues, and it was a shocker. It was an absolute shocker. I think that ultimately, we need to look at the side. Obviously, some of it was due to the fact that injuries obviously plagued us as well. Obviously, Stephen Crichton was out, obviously injured around the King's birthday, so just as selections were being made for the side. So obviously, we had to change that. Obviously, Casey McLean come in, and then obviously Casey McLean also went out with an injury as well, which obviously brought in Marky Mark from the Roosters as well. Obviously, he was brought into the side, but there was a lot of changes to this side. Obviously, Mitch Moses was brought in as well. Obviously, he was the incumbent halfback coming in to obviously play a role, and obviously was injured in the last game. So obviously, he was not picked. He was in the 5'8" position. So obviously, Ethan Strange come in. And Ethan Strange was on the bench, thankfully, but in saying that, I think they kind of needed him as well. They did obviously put him on with 10, 15 minutes left, which basically the game was over at that point in time. But in saying that, the Blues were up at halftime. They were up 12-8, I believe, at half. So, yeah, they were up 12-8 at halftime. And, yeah, it's just an onslaught of points in the second half, which obviously the Maroons, obviously going into this game, it struggled to score second half points in a couple of games in a row against the Blues, and ultimately it's something that was brought up a lot. But obviously they started off the game with a penalty goal in front. Sam Walker ended up converting it to make it 2-0 to the Maroons. Then off the kickoff, a little bit after that penalty goal went through, Tom Flegler accidentally knocked it on. Tony Staggs ended up picking up the ball, ended up scoring the 6th minute. Then Marky Mark ended up scoring in the 20th minute, was converted as well. So let's go over all the lists, to be fair. So yeah, Sam Walker, penalty goal, Tony Staggs, and that was converted, and it was 12-2, about quarter of the way through in the 22nd minute, so it actually wasn't a bad situation And then obviously Trent Liero for the Maroons ended up scoring early in the 26th minute. Was converted by Sam Walker. Sam Walker was fantastic with the boot, I will say. Again, arguably one of the best players on the field. Obviously, I don't think he actually got man of the match. I think, obviously, one person we'll talk about very shortly, I believe, probably got it in front of him. Though, obviously, he put up a case again on why he actually deserves to be in the Origin arena. And especially as a Blues fan, it's not a great situation, obviously, for us. But in saying that, it is one of those things where, there's not much that we can do about it. But obviously Sam Walker's going to be in there for a long time, and I think that Tommy Dearden is going to be it's going to be a really, really good race to see what happens with Tom Dearden when he comes back next season on who goes in the middle. Because if Cam Munster is not in there, obviously Tom Dearden and Sam Walker could both play in there. It just depends on obviously what happens next season, and that's going to be an interesting battle because ultimately they could choose one or the other, which obviously that has been a situation with the 5'8" position in terms of the Blues, whether they've put a player that's in form or whether they just go with the incumbent from last season. It's going to be up for debate next season, obviously. After halftime, so obviously it was 12-8 at halftime. Selwyn Cobbo ended up scoring his first try of the game early-ish in the 46th minute. Was converted again by Sam Walker, then scored a double late in the 51st minute, and then converted as well. And then Jojo Fafita, after obviously a mistake and a break on the left side, again Kalen Ponga was a fantastic player on his own right as well. Playing out of his skin during this game. They got a break on the left side, ended up kicking on the right side from Cam Munster. Perfect kick as well. Brian To'o just got out-jumped by Jojo, so Jojo's ended up scoring his first Origin try, which congrats to him. Obviously, as a Titans fan, I love to see that in some form or fashion. Obviously, a Blues fan, so I kind of didn't want to see it, but at the same time, Jojo has deserved that. Try, and hopefully it's probably the first of many for him. So I feel like that's going to be a great situation for him. The Blues did end up scoring again. Absolute magic from Marky Mark again. Stutter step, which absolutely broke the ankles of Selwyn Cobbo on the wing, and it was converted to make it 26-18. So this game was still in the balance at this point in time. Obviously, it was 8 points in it. And then not long after that, very early in the 62nd minute, the Hammer ended up scoring. Sam Walker converted. Then Lindsay Collins scored about halfway through the 65th minute. He converted. And then obviously Selwyn Cobbo went in on the wing. It was very, very close to going out early in the 71st minute, and was converted again to make it 44-18. So basically the game was over at this point. Mitch Barnett ended up scoring constellation try very early in the 77th minute to make it, and converted to make it 44-24. So a 20-point loss for the Blues. Realistically they should have absolutely lost by a lot more. I think actually 30 or 36 points. I feel like was about right. And ultimately, in terms of the game in particular, Katoni Staggs also got sent to the sin bin for 10 minutes in the 63rd minute from a shoulder charge tackle again on Kalen Ponga. Kalen Ponga was on the ground. He did pop up relatively straight up, but I'm surprised that he didn't go in for an assessment, considering his history with head knocks and obviously the shoulder charge, especially from the first game that we ended up having. I'm surprised that we didn't have a situation where they didn't have him off for about 15 minutes, and ultimately Reece Walsh could have went on. He didn't get used at all during the game, but ultimately, again, it's a situation where 10 minutes I felt like was I thought possibly it could have been a send-off, considering obviously the result in the first game, that it could have been a send-off, but obviously maybe not as severe some people, even in terms of commentary, were comparing it to the Joseph Swahili. That's not how to say his name, but you know the player that I'm talking about. In terms of his shoulder charge in Game 1 in 2023, it wasn't as similar. I feel like, obviously, in terms of Joseph's shoulder charge tackle, he actually did leap from the ground to go into it, and didn't really wrap the arms that well at all. I think he didn't actually really wrap his arms around, whereas Katoni's, obviously he did hit him with the shoulder, but obviously some of it was in the chest, some of it was in the head, obviously, so it was around the neck, head area. Did wrap his arms around, did try to obviously make a tackle, wasn't blatantly late or anything like that. It obviously did happen after the play, that led to obviously a break for a try, but ultimately, 10 minutes is 10 minutes, and ultimately I feel like, yes, in some form of action, that did cost us the game a little bit, but ultimately I think the game was over before that, to be fair to Katoni, but again, I don't think he's going to have to play next game. I think that ultimately is kind of, yes, he did score the first try in this game. He obviously did score another try in Game 1 as well. Ultimately, yes, Suncorp is his home ground, obviously at club level, obviously playing for the Broncos, but at the same time, if someone like Brad McBest is ready to go, or, Kohler possibly could go on that side, because obviously he was playing in the centres, obviously with Marky Mark being on the wing. You got to have either him or Latrell. Stephen Crichton's probably going to come in ultimately, I would think. But you'd think that Latrell, possibly Turbo, maybe if he's back. But I'd go with Latrell if he was ready to go in. Maybe Brad McBest. I personally would think that Brad McBest would be perfect for that spot. Ultimately, because Newcastle are flying really well. And obviously not to say that the Rabbits aren't right now. They're in, obviously both teams are in the top 8 for a reason, but ultimately I feel like it's a situation where we need to change some people. I think Jackson Ford possibly needs to go in for this next game as well. We need some strike in the middle, and obviously he's playing a little bit out of his skin, especially before Game 1, and he wasn't picked for Game 1, and obviously we're still playing relatively well between Game 1 and Game 2, so I don't understand why he hasn't been picked in terms of the middle. Cam Murray didn't start. He probably should start next game, but ultimately, it is what it is. Very disappointing from the Blues. They kind of capitulated. I know that some people will say that it's obviously on Laurie Daly, and it kind of is on Laurie Daly, to be honest, because obviously he's the one that's picking the side. He's obviously the coach, and something needs to happen, and obviously nothing's happening. But Brad McBest is playing on the weekend. In terms of recording this, he's actually playing. He's playing tomorrow night for Newcastle, so he's back. So ultimately, I feel like when it comes to that game in particular, if Bradman goes for a huge game, that really puts a lot of pressure on the selectors to possibly select him, especially if he plays well this game and obviously plays, I think Newcastle play next week. Yeah, they play against the Tigers next week. So on what day is that? The 28th of June. So ultimately, that'll be a little bit before Origin 2, if they can put pressure on, if he has 2 outstanding games for Newcastle against the Tigers and the Dragons. Dragons this week, obviously, coming, and then obviously the Tigers next week. Obviously on the 28th, obviously the 19th is obviously the game against the Dragons. So that's tomorrow when I'm recording this. If he plays well against the Dragons and plays well against the Tigers, I think ultimately you put in a case for the fact that he should be in the side and ultimately could take his spot. It's one of those things where I feel like we just need some strike in the middle, and we need some players obviously that don't go down injured. But if obviously Casey McLean is ready to go as well, at least have him on the bench as well. Have Ethan Strange in the middle as well. I don't know if you take out Mitch Moses or you take out Nathan Cleary. I don't know who you take out of the two in the middle, because obviously Mitch Moses played a lot better. Then obviously Nathan Cleary in the game. Nathan Cleary was a bit lost in the game again. Another game where it matters, and it goes missing again. So that's not really a surprise. But ultimately, let's remember that the last decider that we had, obviously New South Wales did end up winning at Suncorp, the last decider in Suncorp. But again, in saying that, Nathan Cleary didn't play that game in particular. Obviously, Mitch Moses did, and obviously Jerome Luai did as well. But in saying that, yeah, it's very disappointing as a Blues fan. I know I'm rambling a lot, but they did a lot wrong, and ultimately the points just kept piling on because Queensland were much better. They were much better in the first game as well. Obviously the stat, obviously you can go against the stats completely, but yes, they didn't obviously, in terms of scoring the second half, they weren't really great up until this game, and they obviously, practiced on that as well. But to say that the Blues were absolutely average at best, there wasn't too many players that were playing out of their skin during the game entirely. I think obviously Marky Mark might have been good, but obviously he did miss a couple of tackles. I don't think some of them were on him entirely that were tries scored. I feel like obviously there was opportunities with the defence breaking down in some of the areas in the middle, and people going out trying to take tackles when they're not supposed to, and obviously Katoni obviously going to the sin bin as well doesn't help Mark on that side as well because it's the same side. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just very disappointing as a Blues fan to see a 44-24 loss, especially considering a couple of years ago, one of the last times we played at the MCG, the reverse was the case. In fact, it was like a 46 or 48 point to 12 win or something like that, if memory serves me right. But yeah, it was very disappointing as a Blues fan, and hopefully they're back for Game 3. But at Suncorp, Queensland are going to be right on top of it, and I have a feeling it's going to be another Queensland series win. I just feel it in my bones. I don't know why, but it's just the way that they're playing right now with the players that they've got. Doesn't matter that Tom Dearden's out. They're just going to keep on keeping on, and yeah. Alright, Sunday morning. Let's start with the clunker of the result of the weekend, and let's talk about the Giants. Obviously went down to watch this game at NG Stadium against Carlton, and obviously as a clunker result, that means that they lost, and they did. They lost by 23 points to Carlton. It was 88-65. Very, 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 very disappointing. 12 goals 16 to 9 goals 11, and what the actual fuck. I went down obviously with my dad, obviously went down to the event down at HQ, but obviously that was for first year members, obviously considering that he's a first year member and he got the membership this time. He just didn't up my membership in time for it to continue on to this year, so obviously I am technically the guest this time and he's the member this year, and obviously we're only going to 3 games rather than 4, obviously considering that half the season had already started by the time we got our membership all sorted. But went down there, obviously went down to HQ again. Obviously Josh Kelly was being involved in terms of a Q&A. We were late there in terms of travel because we had to take a replacement bus, obviously due to track work between Wollongong and Sutherland. I think it was actually Waterfall and Sutherland, but obviously it was much easier to have the trains from Wollongong stop at Wollongong and then obviously taking the bus from there down to Sutherland. So obviously with that, the first bus that we should have probably been on got waived by accident and waved away. So we had to wait another like 5, 10, 15 minutes or so. So we could have been on the road. Obviously the trains that we took as well. One of the trains that we definitely took, the door wouldn't close, and obviously, it kept saying obviously that something was in the way of it, and this was like the train that was a couple of stops away from Olympic Park, and we were already running a little bit late. I think we run about 10, 15 minutes late in terms of the Q&A part of the whole tour. And for whatever reason, I think it was a piece of paper that was stuck in the door. So maybe some kid thought it was a funny thing to do, put paper in the fucking door, and maybe it wasn't the wind blowing it in, and just really good timing, because, I'm not sure what it was. It looked like obviously one of the train attendants, obviously at the station, went down to see what it was, come back, obviously walking past, because we had a window seat, and he had a piece of paper in his hand that he didn't have before, or at least a couple of pieces of paper. So wouldn't be surprising if it was like preteen or teen thinking that they were going to be funny and put paper in the door and see what would happen. But obviously that set us being late. The event, obviously we just went around the HQ again, just doing the tour. We actually obviously went from the auditorium this time. The auditorium was actually one of the last things that we actually did on the tour last year. Obviously, they started there with the Q&A and actually went backwards. They went obviously from there into the gym. We passed Nick Mannon as well, obviously one of our ruckmen, and obviously he's not back in terms of injury just yet. I think he'll be back in the next couple of weeks or so. Obviously, he was in the gym, passed us on the way past. I was like, said to her, obviously, we had a bit of a queue behind us. It was one of the first people. I was like, guys, just move. Nick's coming through. Obviously, Nick Mannon, just give him some space, just let him through, because obviously it's, he's one of the team members of the club, and obviously it's, we're guests at obviously his employment, so his place of employment, I should say. So, obviously give them the space that they need, obviously. So you look relatively good. So hopefully you'll be back in the next couple of weeks or so. Obviously went into the gym, went right around. Obviously seen a lot of the players boards. Obviously in terms of their debuts. Obviously it hadn't been updated since Toby Bedford was on the list, but I guess they're waiting because obviously Phoenix Goddard's got to be on there. I think Connor Stone, who actually was playing in this game, I think he's got to be added on there as well. There's a few players from obviously the men's team. Obviously Clayton Oliver, I guess, is technically on there as well. This season they might wait until the end of the season to put everybody on there because they haven't obviously done that. But yeah, there's quite a few players that obviously, but Toby Bedford was the last name on that board of the list right now. And then obviously went around the compound, then obviously marched down to the game. Obviously, they had a cultural I think it was cultural appreciation round for this game in particular. So obviously they had an event, obviously representing different cultures. They had some Indian people playing some music in terms of for a crowd on some instruments, and they had obviously different cultures in there at the game. It was great to see. We'll say there was a bit of a downer when going into the game because obviously they scanned our tickets, and I had I think a couple behind me. I think obviously it was a husband and a wife. I'm not sure, but obviously a couple. There were Carlton supporters. I don't know whether they were from Melbourne or not. Most likely, and they're saying, "Oh, why are they're funneling us into this shit? Like what the fuck is the point of this?" and all that type of stuff. And it's very disappointing to see, especially with like the hate that is in this world right now. And obviously, in terms of politics, I'm not going to really dive into it, but ultimately celebrating all sorts of different cultures. That's the point of the round. This round, obviously, we've seen it. The Giants are really representing that. Some of the other teams in the competition are doing the same thing. And yeah, it's just very disappointing to see that. In a place like that where so many people are being represented, so many people are being so many different cultures are there. Obviously they had a Japanese food truck there that actually had some obviously we've got different restaurants as well, obviously a sushi bar and all that type of stuff at NG Stadium in particular. But there's so many different people that are there of different cultures and different nationalities, especially around obviously this time where the World Cup's playing on the other side of the planet, in the US, obviously in Canada, and obviously in Mexico. and just seeing like some of the cultures coming together and just representing and just appreciating the differences in all their cultures. It's just really great to see on the other side of the world, and I just hear something like that, and it's just very disappointing in terms of that. Get back to the game now, obviously, but the Giants, I was going to say the Titans, the Giants led at the end of the first quarter. In fact, they actually ended up winning the first quarter. It was 2-5 to 1-6. So they were in front by 5 points at the quarter time break. And then it was all kind of one-way traffic, mostly from there. There was obviously jumping in early in the second quarter. Obviously the Giants did get ahead, but they got close at the end of the third quarter. They got it all square at the end of the third. In fact, actually, yeah, they got it close to the end of the third quarter. But it was 3 goals and one behind for the Giants in the second quarter, and 5 goals and 5 behinds for the Carlton Blues. Obviously, I think they led by 11 or 12 points at at half time. And then obviously 4 goals and 1 behind for the Giants in the third. And 3 goals and 2 behinds for the Carlton Blues, which obviously again made it a 4-point margin at three-quarter time. And then after that, it was 3 goals and 3 behinds for the Carlton Blues, and it was a measly 4 behinds in the last quarter for the Giants, which made it a 23-point win for Carlton. And it was very disappointing, especially in that last quarter. And we actually left before the siren. Actually, I was leaving the gates of the ground when the final siren was going off. So I was very disappointed with the fact, and a lot of the calls in terms of the game very much went against the Giants. Apparently, the free kick count towards the start of that fourth quarter. Apparently, my friend was looking at it because I was at the game and I was messaging her at the same time. Apparently, the free kicks were exactly the same. I think they both had like 16, which was weird because I was at the ground and it didn't feel like it was that. It was like free kick going to Carlton's way pretty much almost all game, apart from a couple of calls in the first quarter, maybe 1 call, 2 calls in the second, and 1 call in the third. It was very, very much a surprise, but the efficiency rate in terms of the way that the ball movement was in this game was absolutely terrible. 74.8% for Carlton in terms of disposal efficiency, 71.5% for the Giants. So not much of a difference there, but it very much was on the board. It was very much felt. And the efficiency inside 50 was actually a lot better. It was 52.2% compared to 50.8% for the Blues. But yeah, it's 21 free kicks apiece, which I'm surprised that it was the same at the end. Obviously, we did get a few free kicks at the end. Turnover game, we had 10 more turnovers, 82 to 72. But I don't understand why. It just felt like there was so many things that went wrong with this game in particular. In terms of player stats, top scorers, when I can get it loading, because it's never does it really relatively fast. In terms of the game, top scorer Toby Green again, top scorer, 3 goals, 1 for the game. Connor Stone, as I mentioned, one of the players that had not played that many games for the Giants, 2 goals, 1, so he ended up running in second. Actually got 2 goals in a row, so that was relatively good. Aaron Cadman, 1 goal, 1. Brent Daniels, 1 goal. Phoenix Goddard, 1 goal, 1 behind. Jesse Hogan, 1 goal. Obviously got 1 goal really early, and then hit 3 behinds after that, which wasn't great. And then in terms of points, Toby Bedford got 1 behind. Cullen Brown got 1 behind. Stephen Cornelio got 1 behind. And Jake Stringer also got a behind. Apparently Sam Taylor was injured in that game as well. I'm not sure what happened there, but I think it went off probably relatively late towards the end of the game. But Didn't actually see myself what was going on with him. And it's one of those things where I feel like the Giants, the season is very much just blown up to bits in the last couple of weeks. Their ball movement has been absolutely terrible. They're dropping a lot of marks. They're slipping over as well. It was one of those things. So Jalen Laverde also got ruled out in the third quarter with hamstring soreness, which, again, he did take a knee in the back and he stumbled forward. And I did see it, and obviously got hit high a few times. There's a few high tackles against the Giants that didn't actually get called, which was really, really weird. But it's just one of those things. And Jesse Hagan, he did actually split his webbing. Very late in the fourth quarter, he actually went for a shot, which missed, obviously, which was his last shot on goal. And he was looking at his hand a lot. And my dad mentioned it to me. It's like, I must have just cut the webbing in his hand. And it's being confirmed on the article that it is the situation. And Coggers also went off down to the rooms before quarter time. After a decent hit as well. He had a cut over his left eyebrow and got staples in it. So he did go off the ground for a bit. It was very much a game that really went against the Giants in a lot of ways, and the umpires were not making it easy. And in fact, in saying that, it's kind of a little bit more disappointing than the Collingwood game. At least Collingwood, we only scored, we scored 50 odd points, 54, and they scored 87. Carlton, we scored more points, but Carlton did score more points than, or at least just one more point than Collingwood, but it just seemed like a lot of the traffic was going in Carlton's way, and it was, as a fan, it was not a great situation. In terms of the table, with obviously other results not going our way, we drop another position to 12th, though we can drop another position if North Melbourne do win against Richmond today. They haven't actually played that game yet. I think it's the earlier game of the weekend, of the Sunday games in particular. So if North win, they'll jump everybody into the top 10. And push everybody out, which means that the Giants will drop to 13th position if North Melbourne do win. Obviously, if they don't, they'll stay on 12th position, but it's very disappointing after, and now Carlton are again in the same amount of points as the Giants, and realistically, I think that might be season over for the Giants. I know it might be calling it really early, considering there's 7-8 rounds left in the competition. But again, I said this is one of the games that they had to win, because now they got to win at least one or two of these big games against some of the clubs in the top 10, especially in the top 6, to really get into a position of actually fighting for even a wild card spot at this point. Because next game is at the MCG on Friday night against Hawthorn, and obviously we got some issues going into that game. Obviously some glaring issues, obviously in terms of injuries, and that possibly with other players needing to be dropped as well in terms of their effort. I don't know what was going on in the game, but it was just very awful. We got Hawthorn on the Friday, then Saturday, the 4th of July, we play in Canberra against the Dockers. So literally the next 3 weeks, especially because we play at home at NG to play against the Cats the week after. That's 3 games in a row that are teams that are in the top 4 right now. And that's very, it is obviously in terms of the table. Obviously, there's other teams that haven't played yet today, and it might shift, obviously, the way that the table looks. But Geelong most likely won't probably drop out of 4th position at this point. It's very disappointing as a fan, because this is a game that we should have won against Carlton and we didn't. The next 3 weeks against teams in the top 4, and then followed by that at Marvel Stadium we play against Essendon before heading back to NG to play in the Battle of the Bridge. Then obviously a game that we could possibly win on the 1st of August at at the Adelaide Oval against Port Adelaide, but again, that's at the Adelaide Oval. Port usually are playing a little bit better at the Adelaide Oval than they do elsewhere. Then after that, Canberra again against the Suns, obviously with the Expansion Cup. Then obviously at home against the West Coast Eagles. And the last game of the season is against the Adelaide Crows, again at Adelaide Oval. So, it's one of those things where we need to pick up a few wins on the board to even get anywhere close to even a wildcard spot at this point. But again, I feel like the season's basically over. I know it's hate being pessimistic like that, but this is a game that they should have won. This is a game that they needed to win, and obviously the game against West Coast obviously was won as well. The two St Kilda games, obviously losing by an equal total of 9 points in both of those games. 12 points rather. Total amount of points lost in the two games. Obviously, 4 points in the first game and 8 points in the second. You got to win those games. You got to win against West Coast, even if it's being in the West, which was very disappointing. Lost by obviously 17 in that game, and then obviously losing by 23 in this game in particular. Obviously, with obviously some of the big defeats that we've had. Obviously, with the Dogs earlier this season, which obviously wasn't that far away from the Saints game in particular, and obviously the lackluster performance against Collingwood, and obviously against the Swans as well, and even against the Suns, obviously in the Gold Coast as well. It's been very disappointing as a fan to see this team, but now realistically we got to win, especially one of those games in the next 3 weeks against the top sides. We've got to win one of those, and we're possibly going to win probably, this game possibly could be the one. Obviously against Hawthorn a bit up and down and all over the place. Geelong are kind of sliding a little bit, so maybe at NG Stadium we could win against them, but again, Geelong should be back with a vengeance with that, because they always seem to show up when it doesn't necessarily matter for them. And then obviously winning against some of the teams in the bottom of that draw. So obviously probably winning against Adelaide in the Adelaide Oval, and possibly the Battle of the Bridge as well. If not, obviously against the Gold Coast in Canberra, we got to win a few more games to get in with a chance of making the top 10, because right now the Giants just look very lost, and they look like they were out of gas in this game as well. Very late in the game against the Saints, they were looking like that, and obviously their possession was all over the place. They dropped a lot of balls, a lot of marks late in that game. Very much feel like most of the game in this game in particular that I've seen yesterday, they were very much out of gas. They were dropping a lot. I know there was a bit of dew possibly on the field, but they were tripping over everywhere, especially when there was clearances. And obviously we're going in the situation of Carlton's way, and they just slipped over the most inopportune moments of in terms of the Giants' way. And obviously possession usually moved across about half the field, and obviously ended up in opportunities to score for Carlton. But again, Carlton were very lucky in the fact that obviously they scored a decent amount of goals, and the Giants were very bad with the ball, because the fact that they ended up having 28 scoring shots and they only got kicked 12 goals. A lot of that game were only behind by maybe in single digits for a lot of that game, because of Carlton being lackluster in terms of kicking goals in this game. So a lot to be desired when it comes to this game, because it was very, very average at best for the Giants, and it doesn't get any easier from here. So it just feels like the season's pretty much gone at this point, and Kingsley's head might be on the chopping block at the end of the season as well, and I feel for that, because I don't want him to go, but I feel like in terms of obviously the results for this club, the board is most likely going to say this is not good enough. We haven't made it to a prelim final, obviously, in a long time. Since Leon Cameron, this is not probably the way that this team needs to go, and they need to find another coach. And I hope that is not the case with this club. But I know how some clubs work. Obviously, some of the clubs in Melbourne, obviously Carlton is one of them. And we've seen what happens when the results do not go their way, and a lot of things are not going their way. You know, Carlton very much kind of another look on our season as well, because obviously they've made finals and they kind of gotten worse since that prelim final against the Swans. They've kind of progressively gotten worse, and obviously the Giants are in the similar situation where they haven't made it past the semi-final, and it's the highest that they've gone, and they've gone straight sets out. If they haven't been eliminated in the elimination final, which obviously was last year, and then obviously a couple of seasons ago they missed finals completely out of nowhere. So I could see what happens with clubs when the results are not going their way, especially over multiple years, and it's the same coach in the coach's box. Usually that means one thing when it comes to a competition like this. They're not being competitive, fighting in terms of trying to fight for the cup, like fighting for a premiership cup, fighting for the flag, most likely out the door. I've seen it so many times, and I don't want him to be another person on that list. But again, who knows when it comes to board members, because they can be absolutely ruthless at the worst possible times when it comes to clubs. But yeah, 23-point loss to the Giants against Carlton at home. On to a bit of a lighter note, obviously we go to the NRL. Obviously the Titans played against the Panthers at home. Obviously this game was playing towards the end of the Giants game. It started probably about halfway through the second quarter is when it started. It was actually a surprising result, 19 points to 18 win over the Panthers. Now I will preface this by saying that the Panthers were without their origin stars, so they were out without Nathan Cleary, they were without Isaiah Yeo, and they were without Brian To'o in the side, and obviously Casey McLean as well, obviously considering that was injured. We obviously had Tino out as well. It did look like Tino did pick up an injury towards the end of the game, in that game of Origin 2. Obviously I think that sorted itself out. He looked relatively okay and they obviously haven't mentioned that he has been injured at any point, so maybe it was just, whether it was a cramp, obviously, in terms of him working hard, or whether it's just his leg just kind of went the wrong way and it kind of fixed itself back up again. Just didn't look great, and I seen it towards the end of the game, and I'm like, oh, please don't tell me that means that Tino's going to be out. But obviously Jojo was back inside, but yeah, it was a 19 points to 18 win over the Panthers. So yes, obviously the Panthers were without origin stars. We were without one of them. But in saying that, you're going to win the games, and obviously the pathways when it comes to the Panthers are really, really good. So some of them might not be as great as Nathan Cleary has been in terms of their game, but a lot of them are still really, really good, and at least performing at 80-85% of what Nathan Cleary is going for, and obviously some of the other first pick players in their team as well. So can't really take this result off us, because you got to play with the team that you obviously got in front of you. And we've seen it so many times. I've seen it with obviously the Titans a couple of years ago against the Storm when they lost by 2 points to the Storm. It was very, very close, and it was during the Origin period as well. I think around Origin 2, so it was probably around this point of the season a couple of years ago, back when I was living in my old place, and it got down to the wire as well. And this one ultimately got down to the wire as well, but it was one of those things where you just got to play the team that's in front of you, and ultimately a lot of things can go your way, a lot of things cannot go your way, and ultimately for the Titans they did, and they kind of made The overall situation of obviously Australia losing very early on Saturday morning, and obviously the Giants putting up a disappointing performance. It made Saturday feel a little bit better with that, and obviously we'll talk about the Cubs eventually, so we'll talk about that when we get to that. Obviously in the 5th minute, Liam Martin was the first to score for the Panthers. Then in the 12th minute, Luke Garner ended up going over as well. Both of those were converted. And in fact, Paul Alamotti, rather, God, I don't know why I couldn't pronounce that. He was doing the conversion duties, obviously with Nathan Cleary being out, and got all of his conversions. So great on that. Then Curtis Morin in the 20th minute scored. Very great for him. Obviously, been fantastic pickup for us. I think arguably has been one of our best transfers and best pickups of the last couple of years as well, because he's trying to run at everything. It was a bit of a mess, obviously, in terms of that. He kind of sliced through the defence. It was very, very simple at that. I don't know how he got that clear, but he's a great ball runner. He's great at getting meters as well in terms of the thick of it. So he's been one of our great pickups over the last couple of years, and I will say that it was something that I think that has been really, really good for this side that we needed. And then in the 63rd minute, Aaron Mahal scored, and Jaden Campbell also converted that as well. Spin move, couple of spins, kind of turned everybody around, and obviously fell over the line. So it ended up being 12-6 at halftime. Obviously that try was after halftime. For a lot of the middle of the game, there was not that much score, and towards the end of the game, there was heaps. And then obviously Philip Sami scored in the 68th minute off a great pass from Zane Harrison. I think actually Zane Harrison was involved with all 3 of the tries from the Titans in some form or fashion. But goddamn, this pass was, I think it was a cutout pass, but it was a cutout pass through like 2 players. And went from him being like the 4th attacking player, and obviously Sami being the one on the outside because obviously he's on the wing, and it cut out between like over the centre, which obviously on that side I believe was AJ Brimson, and another player which I think possibly could have been Bo Firma, if not Jaden Campbell, possibly that. I didn't actually really see who it was on the inside of Zane's shoulder, but great cutout pass. Was converted, so we went ahead 18 points to 12. Lindsay Smith scored in the 73rd minute and obviously was converted, which obviously tied it all up with like about 5 minutes left. And then there was a couple of field goal attempts. One obviously from Zane Harrison that didn't get high off the ground at all in terms of that, which led to some possession for the Panthers. Then Jaden actually went for one which was charged down and actually involved in the last minute of the play. Philip Sami ended up picking up the ball, so it was obviously 6 again with about, I think it was about 50 seconds left. And then obviously Zane Harrison come down, 79th minute, about 20 seconds left, if not 10 seconds left on the clock. Ices it straight out, 20 metres out. Fantastic. And they got around him, which I appreciate, because that is something that they really should be doing. And obviously Zane Harrison has been playing relatively well, despite obviously some of the results not going in our particular favour. It's been great to see him develop as a halfback, as a 5'8" and a halfback in this competition. And it's great to see, because ultimately we've seen it for the last couple of years in like some of the lower leagues in terms of the Queensland Cup, and obviously in terms of him emerging with obviously like the under-19s. I think he was picked for the Maroons in the under-19s competition, which obviously the men and women of Queensland did win. That was on Thursday night, so we'll mention that as well. But obviously he's been in the schoolboy system. He's been obviously been brought up relatively well in terms of the Queensland Cup, and he's been playing really, really well, and obviously getting a shot in the Titans in that halfback position, and he's been really owning it, whether it's been win or loss for this team. And I'm loving the fact that they got around him for this, because obviously it's a big moment, obviously, in terms of the game, winning against obviously the ladder leading team in the competition, despite obviously having players out. to ice a game like that, after a decent amount of good results going your way as well in terms of obviously try involvement, fantastic. And it's great to see them getting around him for that. So obviously it was a win for the Titans. Obviously it was great because there was the 2 games back to back with that, and obviously the Bulldogs game. The Bulldogs got up in Golden Point by 13 points to 12 as well. So it ended up being very close in the last 2 games on Saturday. It was kind of a bit of a blowout, 14-point win for the Dolphins over the Tigers at Campbelltown. So, and then obviously Friday night, obviously the Newcastle Knights got over by 2 points, 22 points to 20 over the Dragons. So great to see the result go our way, especially after last week when we should have probably won against the Tigers. We kind of bottled it at the end of the game last week. So it's great from the Gold Coast Titans. We do move up. It hadn't actually updated when I seen it last night, but it has been updated now. They do move up to 15th position right now with 12 points, obviously with the for and against being better than the Canberra Raiders right now. Canberra do play today. They play against the Storm, so we could drop down to second last again, but obviously we are in front by 11 points in terms of our for and against right now. It kind of sucks that, again, that Parramatta did win last week and we didn't win, because obviously we would have jumped them as well with a win. And even probably would have jumped the Broncos as well. Yeah, Broncos as well. So we would have jumped into 13th position with a win if we got a win last week as well. So pretty disappointing. We would have got to go down to the bottom 4 with a win, obviously, this week and last week. But, obviously kind of did need that last week to get a win, but obviously getting it this week to kind of make up for that effort last week. And I will say, the Panthers had plenty of times to ice it during the game, and they kind of just let their foot off the gas a bit, and a lot of things kind of went against them, obviously in terms of possession, probably dropped the ball a lot. Was one of those things where in terms of possession they just didn't do a lot with it, and realistically they actually had more possession in the game, 55% to 45%. Their completion rate was better, 82% compared to 78%. Line breaks, we had more line breaks. We just had one more tackle break than they did, making it 43 to 42. They had plenty of offloads. Their kick defusal was worse in 42% compared to 48%. And their effective tackles were a little bit better, at 87% compared to 85%. But in terms of the errors, 17 errors to 10 obviously in the camp of the Panthers. 3 penalties to 1 conceded in terms of the Titans. 4 ruck infringements each. 1 penalty inside the 10 metres, obviously against the Titans. And 2 players on report for the Penrith Panthers compared to 1 for the Titans. And obviously 1 head injury assessment, HIA, in terms of the Panthers there as well. Can't remember who that was, but great win for the Titans, and this is one obviously for retro round. So obviously they were wearing the Gold Coast Chargers jersey again for this game in particular, and it was I seen a screenshot where it was the scoreboard at Seabus, and they had obviously the Panthers with the fact that it's retro round. They had their old logo on there as well, and some people said, look at the fact that look how natural these logos look. The old logos looking on the scoreboard, and it was the Chargers logo on one side with obviously Gold Coast, and then on the other side it was the Panthers, and it was the old Panthers logo. It looked great on the scoreboard. Obviously, it's very much a sign of the times in terms of those logos when they were released, but they looked really, really good, and the fact that we got a win with the Chargers jersey as well, obviously with having Captain Charger, I believe was the mascot's name, he got brought back for this game as well. To see that happen, can we bring him back every week when we're at home so we can get a win? If we can win every game with him being at the ground that we're playing at, that would be fantastic. It won't be a superstitious thing like that, but just thought I'd make a joke on that. But it's great to see for the Titans to get a win, obviously against a team that obviously they should have realistically won against last year as well, with the whole TrainerGate situation. it was one of those things where, that game was in the balance, and then obviously that happened, and obviously we lost in Golden Point. Looked like it was going to Golden Point again, and I was getting very nervous on the train, because obviously I had the notifications that they come through, that obviously they'd won, that we're in front, and then obviously Garner scored, and it was like, oh god, here we go again. We're going to be in a situation where we're probably going to get run down. And then listening to like the last couple of minutes on the radio with my dad, and just getting the win. So obviously our next game is actually don't know why I did that. It's actually our last Friday game of the season. We actually play on Friday night against the Bulldogs at home. So betting odds are very, very similar for both teams. Obviously, Bulldogs getting a win as well, getting a 1 point win, as well as the Titans obviously getting a 1 point win as well. But both of those teams going in with a win, and it's going to be a very, very good game, I would hope. It's going to be the early game on Friday as well. It's going to be the 6 o'clock game. So hopefully you can come away with another win, because the Bulldogs are playing good footy. They have been in a situation where they haven't had the best time in terms of their football, and in terms of having a lot of things go their way. They really haven't this season. But hopefully the Titans can get up and get a win in front of them, because we really need it, and to get off the bottom four especially, we need a win against them, because obviously the next game after that is round 19, which is against the Storm. So obviously we'll have the bye around Origin 3, obviously, and then obviously the players will be back in terms of the Storm side, we think. So like players like Munster, Liera will probably be picked for the team as well in terms of the Queensland squad, and a few other players obviously from the Melbourne team. And hopefully we can get a win over the Bulldogs, because it's going to be a really, really good game. I can feel it in my bones that it's going to be a decent game in its own right, because there are similar positions on the ladder. It says that we're in 13th position, but I don't think that we are. It says that we're in 15th, but for whatever reason it's saying that we're in 13th position compared to 11th. But I guess that's not counting like the buys and stuff like that, with obviously wins. I don't know. But in saying that, the Raiders would be in front of us in terms of wins, because they got one more win than we do. It's just probably obviously for and against at that point. But hopefully it'll be a good game for the Titans against the Bulldogs, obviously at home, before we obviously have to travel to Melbourne after the bye to play against Melbourne. Because after that, obviously, it's Melbourne, then the Sea Eagles at home at Seabus, then obviously Jubilee Oval against the Dragons, then at Seabus against the Warriors, Seabus again against the Cowboys, then in Newcastle against the Knights, August 16th, then at Seabus for the Sharks game, Seabus for the Rabbitohs game, and then Seabus again for the Dolphins. So they end up finishing the season with 5 games out of the last 6 and 6 games out of the last 8 of the season at home. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But a lot of the games are at home now for the rest of the season. Obviously only 3 games being away. Obviously Melbourne, Cogra, and Newcastle. And let's hope we can get some points on the board for this team, because I don't think they'll make finals. Obviously, you're going to make it into the top 8, and we're nowhere close to that. But if we can get a ball rolling, especially with the bye obviously being before that Storm game, if we can get some points on the board, who knows? We can throw everything that we can at it, and obviously, if we come like 10th or something like that, I think that'll be a great result for the team, especially where they've been. But we'll see what happens. But a 1 point win over the Panthers, 19 points to 18 for the Titans, made my Saturday a hell of a lot better than it was originally. Alright, to start off the miscellaneous stuff, I'm actually recording this on Friday morning, obviously during the break that the Cubs have. We're going to talk about the first series, obviously, of the week for them. Obviously, they played against the Rockies at home at Wrigley Field. Obviously, 3 games there. And they ended up coming out on top 2-1. They did eventually do that. We'll get to the situation with the games in a second. So I was just going to load up the app. But obviously, going into this series, had a couple of good wins on the board. Obviously, won our first series against the Giants. Obviously, in San Francisco, for the first time in like a month that we had actually won a series. So that was fantastic, especially after losing, especially against San Francisco at home, and obviously Colorado in Coors Field in Colorado. So obviously come off a loss on the last game of the series, of that Giants series. So not ideal. It ended up being a 5-4 win, and actually a walk-off win, mind you, the 9th of the year for the Cubs. And walk-off win in the first game. Obviously down, we're up actually 2-1 by the bottom of the 6th. Obviously, since we're playing at home, we're playing in the bottom part of the innings rather than the top. That's usually how they do it. It's usually the home team that's hosting the game will play in the bottom of the inning rather than the top one. Obviously, the visiting team will play on the top. So it was 2-1, 1 run in the first and 1 run in the bottom of the 6th. But obviously, PCA starting off actually hit, I believe this was the one where he actually hit the home run off the first pitch. Or I think it was in the first couple of pitches in the bottom of the inning, which was very, very crazy. Made it 1-0 Cubs. Then we got to a situation where someone walked, and it costed us a run, so it was 1-1 at the top of the 6th. Then Matt Shaw tripled on a fly ball. Big Mo ended up running all the way to home. It was a 2-1 advantage for us. Then it was a 3-run home run in the top of the 8th rather, and it made it 4-2. Then PCA ended up in the bottom of the 8th, getting out on a sacrifice fly, which did score 1, which started the momentum actually for the Cubs in that, because if we didn't get that run, that was going to be very, very vital. Then we ended up loading up most of the bases at the point that Pedro Ramirez ended up scoring a single on the left side of the field. Fantastic shot. I thought he might have hit a home run again when watching this on the map when this game was going on, but no, he hit it left for a single. Ian Happ was stopped on third. We had 2 outs at this point as well. And then ball 4 came through. I think it was pitch number 7, I think, of the series. Matt Shaw ended up walking, and since bases were loaded, it was a literal walk for a walk-off, which made it 5-4 Cubs win in the bottom of the 9th. So fantastic result in the first game. Obviously, that was a great result in the mix of it. And then obviously going in, and what I will say in that game in particular, PCA ended up actually hitting the first cycle of the season, of the 26th season in the MLB, and the 13th cycle in Cubs history, and actually was a reverse cycle. So for those of you that don't know what a cycle is, I didn't know about it too much. In that you've got to hit a single, a double, a triple, and a home run in the same game to get a cycle. Obviously, you'll see a lot of Yankees players do it, and you'll see a lot more players from obviously the teams that have won the most. Dodgers, obviously, the Red Sox. They probably had heaps, but obviously PCA is the 13th Cub to do it in history. And fantastic result for him. Obviously, when he did complete the cycle, he did get out straight away from getting caught coming off first base, which wasn't ideal, but ultimately, he hit home run first. Obviously, in the first inning, he hit a triple, he hit a double, and hit a single. Obviously, that triple he didn't actually score, which was unfortunate. Then we kind of got cursed a little bit. We lost 5-2 in the second game. But obviously after the end of the first game, Daniel Palencia ended up having inflammation in his right elbow. So he's been put on the 15-day injury list. which is not ideal. So we recalled Gavin Hollowell, right-handed pitcher. I believe obviously he'll be in the bullpen. And then during this game, the loss, very early in the 5th inning, Edwin Cabrera, who obviously just come back a few games ago, really, left with right hand cramping in his pitching hand. So it wasn't ideal. Obviously, we've had to put in Rollinson in early into that game, obviously, which didn't end up working out too well in terms of the game. But ultimately, to start off in the bottom of the first again, PCA hit it, home run. I think it was off like the 4th pitch this time, which was crazy, 4th or 3rd pitch, to make it 1-0. Then it was a wild pitch, and Matt Shaw ended up scoring. Though in saying that, it was 2-0 Cubs. At the same time, Amaya was also running to second. They threw the pitch to second base. So the guy that was at third base that was getting home obviously got into a situation where it costed them a run for that. And then the top of the 4th ended up being a double to Willie Castro. They ended up scoring 1. And then a home run off a fly ball, which scored 2 to make it 3-2 Rockies. Then the top of the 5th, obviously Cabrera went out with the injury. Rollinson hit through a wild pitch. It scored 1, and then Willie Castro ended up grounding out, but also got the person home to make it 5-2 in the top of the 5th inning, and we couldn't really score anything else all game for the rest of the game. So not ideal for that. I think we left a few on base. Yeah, we left 9 on base as well, which wasn't great in terms of the second game. Third game, we come back a lot better. It was 8-6 in the last game. Ultimately, big thing that did it for us was 7 runs. Yes, 7 in the bottom of the second inning. And we're actually leading 8 runs to 2 by the end of the 5th inning. They did rally back 4 runs in the last 2 innings, but obviously wasn't enough in the last inning. So Matt Shaw in the bottom of the second tripled again for the second time in as many days, which scored Ian Happ and Bregman. Obviously Ian Happ was on a bike. He was running. Then Carson Kelly scored a double on a fly ball and went down to the ground. Matt Shaw ended up scoring off that. Then Dansby joined the party, hit a 2-run home run right down the bottom, I will say, of the strike zone. And it was smoked. It went pretty far. So they ended up scoring 2. Obviously, made it 5-0. Saya ended up scoring a double, which made it 6 runs to nothing. Obviously, Nico Horner got on base before that. And then Alex Bregman got out on a sacrifice fly to score Saya in for the 7th run. And saying that, before obviously Alex Bregman actually went out and got out for the second out of the inning, I think all those runs, the top 6 runs in that innings, actually were on no outs at all. So we actually did really well to restrict a lot of that. So obviously in this game, PCA didn't actually hit a home run off the lead. Sterling Thompson ended up homering on a fly ball to left field, made 7-1. And then PCA did end up hitting a home run in the bottom of the 4th inning. It was reviewed. It did look like on the replay of watching it that it was close to being fouled, and it was very close. And obviously they reviewed if it was fair or not, and it was from the umpire, not from obviously any of the managers, which is fair enough. But it did count, and even PCA didn't have any idea on whether it was going on or not. He obviously started running to first base, obviously, or wasn't sure, and then obviously ended up running to first base when it was confirmed, and then obviously doing the rounds after that to home base, made it 8-1. Then in the top of the 5th inning, it was a home run again to make it 8-2. Then the top of the 8th inning, ended up being a ground out, which ended up scoring 1. Got someone to third base, and it was a 2-run home run, which made it 5. And then the top of the 9th inning, there was a home run, which made it 6. And I was very, very nervous for this, but they did actually get it all sorted at the end of it all. Assad actually didn't play too badly. Went to the wrong tab. So he pitched 5 and 2/3 innings, got 5 hits, 2 runs earned, and 1 strikeout, which I'm surprised it was 1 strikeout, but the 2 runs obviously were a 2-run home run off him. Roberts ended up giving up 3, which didn't help. Thankfully, Caleb come in and struck out 1, and then 1 run from Jake Webb, which made me very nervous, especially considering that he was the sweeper, basically. Sweeper pitcher at the end, trying to close it out, when obviously usually we'd have Palencia in that spot, but obviously, he's injured, so yeah. So not ideal. Obviously, it's a day break today. We head obviously into the games against Toronto at home at Wrigley Field. So the next 3 games, obviously, we'll be playing at Wrigley Field very early in the morning, 4:20. Blaze it. Sorry. But yeah, 4:20 in the morning, my time, when all 3 of these games are being played. So that'll be tomorrow, Sunday and Monday for me, in terms of those games. So we'll talk about that at the end of this video, with the other miscellaneous stuff, obviously, when we'll talk about that. But yeah, 2-1 series win. Obviously, it feels like we keep getting bloody cursed because we got Sayer hurt last week, and obviously it was a comeback as a designated hitter for this series, which was great. And hopefully he'll be back proper. But obviously Matt Shaw's actually been in the right field, so he's actually been relatively subbed in for a really, really good fielder in general, as a good sub. And obviously Matt Shaw's been hitting really well too, so it's good that he's actually come back. I think we're supposed to have Matthew Boyd, obviously, in terms of the Giants series. We didn't obviously get him. He's obviously still recovering, but he'll be back relatively soon. I think maybe possibly for this series against Toronto, but we could have him for the Mets series, or obviously might hold him off until Milwaukee. And then obviously Justin Steele, I believe he's relatively coming back soon. Someone was back coming up very, very soon, was with the team. I can't remember who it was now, but I know that when it comes to the Cubs, it was somebody very, very, very soon coming back. I can't remember who it was. Sorry, I'm just going to load it now so I don't forget to speak on it. It was Justin Steele. I was correct. So he'll be with the team for the next 3 weeks. So obviously progressing that left elbow surgery. Obviously, he's a left-handed pitcher. So he's going to be back for a couple of weeks with the team. Obviously going to practice pitching. Obviously probably pitching on the mound as well. And then obviously we'll be back eventually. We don't know exactly when he'll be back, but being with the team obviously for the 3 weeks will help a lot. So we'll see if he comes back. He'll probably be back after the All-Star game, I would imagine, because obviously that's in a couple of weeks' time, in terms of actually look at the thing. So it's Toronto. If I go in with the Mondays, it's 1, 2, 3. Be 4 weeks from Monday. So be 4 weeks from Tuesday is the All-Star game. So it's 4 weeks away. But obviously that will help in the long run, obviously, with that. But obviously we'll talk more about the Cubs, obviously, when we talk about the Toronto series. Sorry if I rambled a little bit, but 2-1 series win over the Rockies. I know, again, in saying that, yes, it was the last team in the National League, but obviously considering we lost to them 2-1 at Colorado, it makes it 3-3 for the full season series, which is fair enough considering where the Cubs have been relatively right now, but it looks like that some people including PCA and including Matt Shaw, obviously back from his return from injury. We're on a heater right now, and if we can get some more hitting in from Bregman, from Ian Happ, who obviously hits every now and again. Obviously, he's not fully fired up yet, but obviously he's hitting and getting on base quite a bit. If we can get some more people hitting, Dansby obviously hitting relatively well, Carson Kelly hitting it more consistently, Nico, Michael Bush hitting it consistently, although Michael Bush is getting on base a lot, as well as Nico. Nico is getting on base a decent amount too. If we can score those runs, then it's going to help a long way. So we'll see how it goes. But obviously 2-1 series win at home against the Colorado Rockies. Alright, also in the miscellaneous stuff, I will talk about obviously the World Cup, obviously with Australia versus the United States. Obviously it was at Lumen Field in Seattle. Obviously they call it Seattle Stadium. I guess it's partially because they don't have the sponsors for the fields being broadcasted in the FIFA World Cup for whatever reason. I guess that they can't obviously, get the licensing for everything in that. So I guess that's why they just call it Seattle Stadium. It's very much like how obviously with the games here, whether it's the men's, like obviously in the build up to the World Cup, obviously the World Cup qualifying games, or obviously like the Women's World Cup obviously is another big example. They just call it like Stadium Australia, or like obviously Sydney Stadium or Brisbane Stadium, that sort of thing, because they obviously don't have the money and like the licensing for the licenses in terms of who owns the particular field that is advertised. They don't have it for advertising purposes, so obviously they're legally obligated. They can't say that, but obviously they're playing at Lumen Field, obviously home of Seattle Seahawks, the Super Bowl reigning champions. The Seattle Seahawks, love saying that. But yeah, it was a 2-0 loss for Australia against the US, though in saying that, their first half was very, very average. There was an own goal in the 11th minute off Cameron Burgess. Not much that could be done with this, because I think Patrick Beach in the goals did twitch before that and thinking that it was going to be a shot on earlier. And I guess obviously since he twitched kind of off his line, he kind of went and made a move, and Cameron Burgess was facing obviously towards his own goal and accidentally hits it with his shin and it goes in. And then obviously Alex Freeman, very controversially, the second goal of the game in the 43rd minute, scored, though obviously it was checked by VAR to be offside. He wasn't the player that actually was offside, was given a goal. But for whatever reason, I don't know, and maybe yes, partially this could be my bias for my country compared to obviously the US, but the guy that was offside, that was relatively close to Alex Freeman, looked like that he impeded Patrick Beach, which in the rules they can't do. An offside player cannot do that, like an impeded player, whether it's the goalkeeper or like a defender, in obviously around the shots of especially the goalkeeper especially. So I don't understand why that was not looked at more and possibly overturned, because it was called offside and then they actually overturned the decision. Like, it was initially called offside when it went in the back of the net by obviously the linesman. And obviously they went to VAR to check it, and they've overturned the decision, which is really, really, really strange. I don't understand why. Obviously, as I say, Alex Freeman was not the man that was offside. In fact, he just did what he had to do. He was onside. He was onside by quite a few centimetres, quite a few inches. Not a lot, but not a lot of distance, but enough. But obviously the player that was involved in around the play, I'm sure impeded on Patrick Beach, and even was probably touching him if he wasn't actually touching him. I'm pretty sure he was that close that he was touching him and involved in the play in some form. And obviously you'll see, if you go out there and search the replays for obviously the goals in this game and obviously possession in terms of the highlights of the game, I'm sure you'll see it and look at it yourself. Probably look over it about 10, 15, 20 times, because I've looked at it quite a lot and I still don't understand why the decision was overturned. But ultimately, it was a 2-0 loss. Though in saying that, Australia were very average in the first half, I will say. And some of the picks that they had on the field, it should be on Tony Popovich as a coach, because some of them just didn't work. Matthew Leckie's being on the field. And I get, obviously, Irukunda possibly not being on the field, obviously, in terms of a cauldron-like situation, as even the commentators for the game even said it, very much like, say, the state of origin with, obviously, New South Wales going to Suncorp. Obviously, Suncorp usually called the cauldron, especially in a origin decider, which obviously, again, this year is happening. But in saying that, it's obviously very hostile, and it's probably going to be one of the most hostile games pretty much the entire competition for the Socceroos, and especially for him. And obviously, he's a very fired up player. He very much is fighting for his country. He's very much going to throw everything on the line, everything, literally even that and the kitchen sink. So maybe it was a situation of just keeping him out of the game, just keeping him focused and not being obviously giving away possible free kicks, possible cards, and possibly even a red card eventually. But I get it, but he needs to start next game. He definitely needs to start, because we need him on the field, because with the subs that we had, especially at halftime, the whole game kind of flipped on its head. Obviously the USA a little bit early in the second half and very late in the second half had a decent amount of possession, but for the majority of the second half, Australia found ways to get around the US, and the US were very much on the back heels, even when they were defending a 2-0 lead, which is a decent lead to, obviously defend. They had a few shots on, and it was a situation where Australia did get some attempts on goal, and there was some that even went on target as well, and it was a decent amount of possession in their favour in the second half. It was 55-30 with 15 in contention, 15% in terms of possession, but outright possession, Australia only had 30%. Again, obviously being the side with the least amount of possession, like they did in the Turkey game, and we'll talk about Turkey in a second. But obviously we conceded 2 goals, one inside the penalty area, which obviously was off a rebound. It was 10 shots to 5, obviously in the US's favour, 2 on target for each team. Obviously the 2 that were on target went in, or at least one of them went in, obviously, for the US, and it was 3 apiece off target, which is very surprising, because that means that there's only 5 shots out of 10 in terms of the attempts on goal that are unaccounted for, in terms of the US. And I guess one is obviously blocked, but that's usually one that's on target, so that kind of doesn't make any sense. But obviously the possession was well in the US's favour, and a lot of the calls were very much in the US's favour. There was quite a few calls that didn't go Australia's way, which probably should have, especially that tackle on Nestori and Irukunda towards the box, if not in the box, very handily, being taken off the ball, not really shoulder to shoulder, was shoulder right into the middle of his chest. Don't understand how that one didn't actually get called. There was a handball about 5 minutes later that also didn't get called when he was grabbing on to Irakunda's jersey, and obviously Irukunda was going up for a header, so obviously he was holding the jersey very much like this, a little bit lower obviously on the jersey towards the torso, but very much holding onto the jersey, and it hits him in the wrist. So I don't understand how that wasn't called either, but it's just one of those things where I don't understand some of the calls of the game. The ref obviously is a very contentious one, apparently has been involved in a match fixing scandal quite a few years ago. I don't know obviously if fallen into his ways again, or whether he's actually, obviously committed to that, and obviously, said, yes, I've done it in the past, and obviously hasn't done it again ever since. But it just feels like a lot of the calls that went in the US's favour, and obviously the US are now through to the knockout stage, obviously automatically, obviously winning their 2 games in their group, in their pool, and obviously Australia, obviously languishing. Mexico also through as well. Haiti has been eliminated. Germany went through this morning. They beat the Ivory Coast. There wasn't as much as they thought they were probably going to win by. Obviously, quite a the other groups haven't played a lot yet, but Australia is still in the second position in the group, in Group D. Obviously, with the goal difference being a flat 0. Obviously, they won 2-0 against Turkey and obviously lost 2-0 against the USA. So flat 0. And Paraguay ended up getting a 1-0 win over Turkey. So Turkey have also been eliminated as well. So it goes down to obviously the game against Paraguay to confirm our situation in the knockout stage. So Paraguay have to win to get in. They have to win, obviously, to get in, because if a draw happens, obviously the goal difference will be one of the things that will be the difference in that. Obviously, in terms of that, obviously it'll be goal difference, which obviously -2 for Paraguay because they got belted, obviously, and lost by -3 in the game against the US. And obviously Australia have got 0. So they've got more in terms of their goal difference. That will go through automatically. And it'll be a situation where obviously Australia will only have to play for the draw, but obviously they're going to go out for the win because, I mean, why wouldn't you go out for the win at this point in time, especially after obviously this game against the US not going their way? It's very much a situation where this is a game that probably should have went in their favour a little bit. I guess in terms of the possession game, that's fair enough. But again, in saying that, obviously Turkey had the majority of the possession and come away with the loss in that game. And again, they did have the most possession in that Paraguay game too, especially with Paraguay being down to 10 men with a stupid red card from the player. Obviously got picked up covering his mouth in front of an opponent and saying some stuff, and he actually was saying some stuff, whether it was discriminatory, homophobic or anything like that, we don't know. But obviously that has been a rule that's been introduced for the tournament this year. You can't do that because we've seen it a lot in leagues around the world, and obviously with the crackdown on obviously stuff of that nature being discriminatory especially, and obviously that's a contentious thing in terms of especially where this game was being played. Well, our game was being played. I'm not sure in terms of the Paraguay game, but with at least one of the nations is very contentious at least, but in the game it's very much showing its head, and I understand the red card for it, and it's a stupid decision from the player in general. When there's like 50 million cameras going on at the same time, and you're thinking that VR is not going to pick up, like have a camera that's going to pick you up on that, like that's really, really stupid. So the 26th of June is our last game against Paraguay. It will be at 12 p.m. my time. So ultimately, let's hope that they do at least get the draw, if not get a win, go through, and they play any of the teams in, I think it's Group G, I believe is how the breakdown is in terms of the bracket. Might be able to see it here. Where is the D? Yeah, second position in Group D is this, and versus the second position in Group G, which obviously the Group G, if I scroll back up, is New Zealand, Iran, Belgium, and Egypt, and obviously all of those teams have only played one game so far, and all of them are on the same goal difference because they all got a 0-0, 1-1 draw, and all have got 1 point, obviously, because they got draws on each other. So any of those teams will be played against, any of those teams could be playing against Australia if Australia stay in second position. If not, obviously, going into third If Paraguay somehow win, they've got to be one of the best 8 of the third place teams to go through in the knockout stages. So we'll see. I'm not sure, but at least hopefully they play for the draw. But they're going to go out. Especially Tony Popovich is going to get in their minds that they got to win this game, and they probably should. They probably should go out and go out and fight for it and try and win the game, because that's what they should be doing. And obviously, if they lose, they're out in the group stage. If not, they go through to the round of 32. So we'll see what happens with it all, but obviously 2-0 result, not great. What I will add to this, because obviously we haven't talked about Liverpool. The Premier League match schedule obviously has been announced. That was announced on Friday. Our first game is against Newcastle United. I can't remember if it was at home or away. It was one of them. Season away. So we're playing at St James's Park on the opening day of the campaign on the 30th of May. So that's when we start our competition. That's when we finish the competition, rather. And we play against Bournemouth in our last game. But we play on Sunday, August the 23rd, is the start of the season at St James's Park. Then we have Nottingham Forest at home in the second game on Saturday the 29th. Then we play Ipswich, then Fulham, then Bournemouth. Obviously Ariola being the coach previously from there. So it's a decent first couple of months. And then October is when it really starts getting into the thick of it, because we have Manchester City at home, obviously post Pep Guardiola being there as coach. Then Brentford away, then Brighton at home, and then obviously Arsenal, last season's champions, at home at Anfield on the 31st of October. So right on there, right on Halloween. Going to be a very interesting first 3 months, because if we can get through that with mostly good results in those games, that's going to be great for us. And they did sign a new player in terms of a trade deal, a transfer. Victor Munoz, who's obviously playing in the Spanish World Cup squad. He's one of the young players there, and I forget on which position he plays on. I think he plays on the wing, to be fair. And Osasuna, I think, was the team that he was playing for previously. But obviously he's subject to a full work permit, successful work permit application and international clearance for it. But obviously he's on World Cup duty right now. And yeah, he will be an addition, and I think that'll be a great addition, because obviously Newcastle are actually after him as well. And obviously Newcastle and Liverpool has kind of swooped in. So probably a good first signing in terms of wings. Obviously, we've got a few wings there, but obviously he's been top quality, and I don't think Iriola would have chosen him if he wasn't at least top quality. And hopefully he can bring some fire into this side, and hopefully it'll be the first of quite a few transfers that come through, because obviously we need a new striker. Obviously, yes, we got Alexander Isak, obviously up there, but of a notable striker in terms of the caliber, maybe not necessarily on Salah's level, but obviously as a prong 2 to Isak's prong 1, maybe. We might need obviously a new striker in the ranks, and obviously a new back as well, obviously with Andy Robertson going as well. So be interesting to see how Liverpool end up. But just thought I'd add that at the end of it. But obviously 2-0 loss, obviously to the US, for Australia, and obviously all of it to play for against Paraguay coming up. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, not a great result, but at least the second half was a lot better. It's just obviously we didn't get a goal on that. If we got a goal on that, would have been great, but it is what it is. And just to add this towards the end of the video, I guess kind of a miscellaneous thing, we'll talk about obviously the NRLW Titans team, obviously the women's team. They played their first trial this week. They played against the Cowboys, and it was a 24 to 16 point loss for them in the first trial. Didn't hear much about the game, to be honest. They don't really broadcast the games at all in terms of the trials. Like, it was on the Titans website and on, I believe, on the NRL app or something like that, but it doesn't tell me, it doesn't actually pop up in any of the draws or anything like that when I'm trying to research it, to see obviously who scored and obviously how the possession was and all that type of stuff. So as far as I know, they played relatively okay, obviously against the Cowboys. I think that they did lose to the Cowboys last year in their trial as well. So, it's not an uncommon occurrence, but just wanted to add that into the video because if I don't talk about it, obviously, their season actually starts obviously in the first week of July. Obviously, when we get to that, I'll just have a look at the draw. In terms of the Women's Premiership, they start on the 4th and they play against the Roosters. So, obviously one of last year's grand finalists, obviously one of the big cohorts teams of last season, obviously with them and the Broncos, obviously dominating the competition, but obviously they play on the 4th. So I believe they play on a double header on the 4th. Are they playing at home? They are playing at home. The men's playing at home on the 4th. That is a question. I'm going to scroll all the way down. No, they had the bye. So it'll be the men's last bye for the season. So it'll obviously be after the game against the Bulldogs. So obviously they'll have their trial again next week. I think. I'm not sure. It said in the poster, obviously after that we'll see you in 2 weeks at home. So I'm guessing it's only one trial this year. I'm not sure. But obviously they will play after the weekend after the Bulldogs men's team play, obviously the Titans men's team at Seabus. So obviously the season will start with a heavyweight of the competition, and then we'll go from there. But obviously 24 to 16 point loss for the Titans women in their trial match against the Cowboys. Alright, Monday morning, we'll get to the last of the miscellaneous stuff, and before I head into the Cubs, obviously against the Blue Jays, we'll just go over the tables for the NRL and the AFL, because all the games are done. So Penrith still on top in the NRL on 28 points, obviously losing to the Titans. Second is the Warriors after a big win for them over the Cowboys. Third position is the Dolphins on 22 points. Followed by the Roosters, who also got a win yesterday. They also move up to 22 points into 4th position. And also on 22 points is Newcastle Knights in 5th. It's just obviously for and against there, heavily in the favour of the Dolphins there, followed by obviously the Roosters and then the Knights. Which means that Manly, obviously with the loss, dropped to 6th position. Souths move up to 7th with 20 as well as Manly. Then Cronulla still rounding out the top 8, obviously even despite the loss, also on 20 points, because 9th position is North Queensland, so they're on 18 points, and also the West Tigers are also on 18 points in 10th position. Melbourne Storm still in 11th position with 16 points, they got a win over the Canberra Raiders. 12th position is the Bulldogs, also on 16 points. 13th position is Brisbane. The Broncos on 14, followed by Para, also on 14 points. Then obviously the Gold Coast in 15th position. They stay in that spot, obviously, because Canberra lost. They're on 12 points, and the for and against is a lot better by 33 points compared to Canberra, who are also on 12 points. And obviously last position is still the Dragons, obviously heading into obviously the game against the Bulldogs early on Friday night, which is actually going to be a very, very good encounter. 12th versus 15th there, so actually pretty close on the table. In terms of the AFL, Fremantle's still on top, obviously with 52 points after a big win on Friday night. Actually, I think it might be Thursday night, rather, sorry. Swans on 48 points. Obviously, they just had their last bye, so they're 4 points behind now. Fremantle, I believe, has still probably got another one on the docket. In fact, obviously, Fremantle have actually played 14 games, so I feel like are they on the bye this week? Let me have a look. Pretty sure they're on the bye. No, they're done. So obviously the Swans are in front. Obviously in terms of, the Fremantle Dockers rather are in front of the Swans by a win. Obviously, Hawthorn in third position on 38 points. 36 points in fourth position is the Geelong Cats. They dropped from third to fourth, with the Adelaide Crows joining them on the same amount of points in fifth position, and Melbourne in sixth position. Then out of the top six and into the wildcard spots, also on 36 points is the Western Bulldogs. They're going to win over the Saints yesterday, so they move into seventh. Brisbane Lions, obviously on the bye, dropped to 8th position on 32. Then the Gold Coast Suns in 9th position despite the loss to Hawthorn on 28 points. And moving into the top 10 is North Melbourne, also on 28 points after getting a win over the Richmond Tigers. 11th position is Collingwood on 26. Then the Saints drop obviously out of the 10, obviously with North Melbourne and Collingwood both getting wins. Still on 24 points in 12th position, which makes the Giants in 13th. Not too far behind, 0.3% now in terms of percentage between St Kilda and the Giants. Also on 24 points is Carlton, obviously with the win over the Giants. Then in the bottom four still is Port Adelaide on 16. Also on 16 is West Coast Eagles. Then the Richmond Tigers on 8. And Essendon still with 4 points on the bottom. With obviously big game on Friday night for the Giants in round 16 against the Hawthorn Hawks at the MCG. So big game for the Giants, and one that realistically is one that we probably need to win to stay alive in the season, to be fair, because there's not too many games left with the rest of it. In terms of the Cubs, because we'll go back to the Cubs now, obviously they had the series with the Blue Jays. One thing I will say is that obviously the game would have been played today, but obviously was postponed until the 6th of August due to rain. And they say inclement weather, which obviously is raining. Rain very early on, so that game in the 3-game series will be delayed. But we'll say, obviously, the Cubs won in the first game against the Blue Jays, 16 runs to 2. We'll say that Carson Kelly, in the bottom of the first, hit a grand slam as well. So they made it 6-0 at the time. I think it was 7 runs in the first inning. And then Justin Dean, someone that just got called up out of our AAA team, got a 3-run triple in the 7th for his first major league hit, so that was fantastic from him. So pretty great there in terms of that first game. It was great. I believe, yes, it was 7 runs in the first. It was in the bottom of the first. Then Toronto got 1 in the top of the third. Then the top of the 6th, so it made it 7 runs to 2. Then we got 4 in the bottom of the 6th. We got 5 in the bottom of the 7th. So they actually made it 9 runs out of the last couple of innings out of the bottom of the 6th and the bottom of the 7th. So 18 hits for 16 runs, which is really, really, really good. And actually our highest total in terms of runs scored all season long. So it was great from the Cubs to see that. In the second game, the Cubs lost 8-6, and we'll say that before that game, Daniel Palencia was diagnosed with a mild right elbow flexor strain, so he'll be out for about a week before ramping his production back up again. Obviously, just to remedy that elbow. So not ideal. Ultimately, that's going to go to a video, isn't it? Yes, it is. So we'll say in the second game, with the scoring, Matt Shaw hit a home run and got a 3-run home run in the bottom of the second to make it 3-0. Then PCA scored a 2-run home run with Darmsby on the base to make it 5-0. Then there was a 3-run home run in the top of the 7th to make it 5-3. Then there was a single in the top of the 8th to make it 5-4. Then a single to make it all tied up. Then it was a homer, which was a 3-run home run to make it 8-5. And Nico grounded out, and Amaya ended up scoring and make it 8-6 in the bottom of the 8th. But yeah, we just didn't get any more runs after that, after having a couple of people on base on both the bottom of the 8th and the bottom of the 9th in that game in particular. So it was pretty disappointing in that regard, considering how we were playing earlier in the game, and the bullpen didn't really help us. It was after, obviously, Colin Ray went out. He got a couple of hits on him, but obviously didn't have any runs scored against him. Taken out. Rollison was put in for one batter for some reason. Maybe at the end of obviously Raya being taken out. And then obviously Jacob Webb was one of the players that ended up having runs scored against him. So that was not great from that. We did acquire a right-handed pitcher, Jaden Murray from the Astros, in exchange for the first baseman in the minor leagues, Cameron Cisneros, Sisneros, I believe that's probably how that's pronounced. So we get a right-handed reliever. I believe he's a reliever pitcher. And then obviously Matthew Boyd in trying to come back looked good in the high A South Bend game, striking out 7 players in 4 scoreless innings in his, I think his return game in terms of returning back into the swing of things. But yeah, obviously the last game, with the series being 1 apiece between the Blue Jays and the Cubs, that game is obviously on the 6th, so it'll be the 7th of August for me. No, I don't want to fill in. So if I scroll down, so we have, so that's at the end of the series against the Dodgers at home. So we won't have the day break in between that Yankees Dodgers to start August. Fuck, that is not a good way to start that month. Holy Jesus. Yeah, just looking at that, and it's just like, whoa. But obviously, with the postponement, obviously it's a day break for us, going into obviously traveling to Citi Field to play the New York Mets for 4 games before traveling to Milwaukee for 3, and then traveling back to Wrigley Field to play against the San Diego Padres. So we're going to have an interesting couple of series coming up. Obviously, a big one against the Mets, where we probably need to win at least 3 of those games, I would think, out of that series. The Mets actually come back swinging relatively well, and obviously Milwaukee is Milwaukee. We know obviously that's going to be huge in terms of that. Obviously, we're still sitting right now in the 3rd position in our division, behind the Cardinals and obviously the Brewers. Obviously 5 games out is St. Louis from Milwaukee, and we're another 2 games behind them, behind St. Louis. So looking relatively good in terms of the wild card. We're actually in the top 6. We're actually in the 6th position. The Padres were actually in yesterday, because obviously the loss that we had yesterday against the Blue Jays, and San Diego won. Obviously San Diego must have lost, because we were in the 7th position when I looked yesterday in terms of that. So we're in. San Diego Padres are out by half a game, as the Marlins, and obviously the Nationals as well. Actually, I think even the Nationals might have been in that spot but they also had a loss. But Marlins have won 4 in a row, so they're looking pretty sweet in terms of that. In terms of the Mets, they're third last right now in terms of the wildcard spots, 5.5 games out of that position. But we won't talk about that too much. And obviously the Brewers are in the third position, with the Atlanta Braves actually jumping into that top position again, with the Dodgers losing too, because the Dodgers actually moved up into the top position earlier in the week. And I think even late last week, because obviously Atlanta kind of fell off a little bit and struggled. But obviously on the other side, or I should say Atlanta, Dodgers, Brewers, then St. Louis Cardinals, Phillies, and then Cubs is your top 6 in the National League. In the American League, it's the Yankees still on top, Cleveland Guardians in second, Seattle Mariners in third, then Tampa Bay Rays in 4th position, the White Sox in 5th position, and then the Toronto Blue Jays in 6th position. So with the win, obviously, that they got yesterday and the postponement today, they move into, obviously, the top 6 in the American League. And, it's still pretty cool on the bottom, with the Detroit Tigers 5 games out of the wildcard spot on their side. The Red Sox 6 games out, 6.5 games for the Royals, and then 7 games out for the Angels. So that's pretty crazy. It looks like Shota is pitching tomorrow. Obviously, he was going to pitch today, but obviously with the game being postponed, he's ready to go and has another day rest. So good on the Cubs there for acknowledging that, and we'll see what happens in terms of pitches and in terms of what happens with pitching coming up, because there's quite a few games there that we should be winning. I wish that we could sweep the Mets. I'm feeling like we won't, but if we can get at least 3 of the games out of the 4, I feel like we're going to be in a good state of mind with that. I would love to sweep, but I just have a feeling that the Mets will get one back, because obviously they did end up getting. They've actually been playing some decent baseball against some really good teams, like the Yankees, for example. They ended up getting 2 wins out of 3 in that, so in the Subway Series. So they actually did relatively well. I think actually even winning the last 2 games out of that series, to be fair, because they actually went down, I'm pretty sure, in the first game, and then won 2 games back to back against the Yankees, who were still red hot at that point in time. Obviously not in the I think they were still in the wild card spot at that point, but they were still playing really, really good baseball. So the Mets can pull out a couple of really good games, and hopefully they don't against the Cubs, but we'll see what happens with that. And then obviously got a tough task after that to go to Milwaukee to play the Brewers for 3 games in another division series for the year, and obviously being behind 3-0 already against Milwaukee. Hopefully we can get a couple of games off them too, but I'm not looking forward to that series, because the scores could be anywhere, all over the place for that. But looking all right. So with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. Sorry I rambled on for some of those games, obviously with Origin 2, with the Giants and that. It's just obviously I've seen both of those teams play better, and it's just I'm being pessimistic, but and obviously great job to Zane Harrison and the Titans getting the win over the Panthers. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Man 100. You guys have a great day or night, and of course, take care.